welcome to episode 64 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast that exclusively covers the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I am not the tame Foundry author Drogan1701. He has decided that tonight there are more important things than discussing the Foundry, and that's understandable because real life always takes precedence. I am not the sort of person to come up with strange and funny things about the people that are here with me, so I'm just going to say that I'm here with Greendragoon, as always.
Hey.
We have a couple of guests tonight helping fill in the fact that we don't have our full round of normal people. We have Castmodean with us.
Hello, Stowe community. Oh, wait, that's not my shtick.
We also have with us SirBoulevard.
And I'll come up with something snarky to make up for Drogan's missing.
Right. I figured I'd save all his snarky comments so he could use them again in the future. Just a real quick reminder before we get started too far tonight. People voting for Foundry Challenge number 9 is open. The Mirror of Romulus. It is open until July 4th. Get out there and play the missions. Get your votes out. So, here we are, episode 64, and
we've got a lot of news.
We've got a lot of news. Yeah, I was going to say, we've got a lot of news, and I think the discussion around that news is probably going to end up taking us a while. So, Dragoon, why don't you tell us what kind of things we should be thinking about talking about?
Well, I'll try and get through some of the less controversial things first. First off, this is something I personally discovered this last week, and that is that you can wear beachwear on the Risa Foundry mission, or the Foundry map. And this is the map that of the old Risa that we have in the Foundry, but beachwear will totally work on that map. It will not work on any other map, but will work on that one. What else? We've also got a few new discoveries.
Wow, that's good news. Sorry,
yeah.
That's just like good news and weird and unexpected.
Well, I mean, we've talked so much about how it would be kind of cool to be able to do some of these things in the Foundry, and apparently, at least one of them, we can. I did try the power boards and the floaters. Those do not work in the Foundry map.
Which is funny because they work on that social version of that map.
They do, but I think they use like volumes, and every time like something with coding attached tries to get put into a Foundry map, it just stops working. So apparently the swimsuit is a map-wide property of some kind versus a like a volume. That's the only way I can think of. We've thanks to Drogan, actually, we've got a few new interesting things that have been discovered with Season 9.5. First off, the Rysian cruise liner, which made its unexpected early debut on Tribble, is back on Tribble. And so a lot of us are hoping that this means that it'll transition to holodeck once 9.5 goes live. And a new ship has been discovered, as is so often the case with the Foundry on Tribble.
Yep.
Basically, it is called the Narcine Dreadnought, and if you were to see this thing, you would immediately recognize it as the Xindi aquatic ship from Enterprise.
Which, if you're the sort of person to listen to the data mining that happened a couple of weeks ago, we had kind of heard that it was a possibility, but now we're seeing it on Tribble, and very often, at least from my point of view, what we've seen there ends up being an accident, and we weren't supposed to see it quite that early. Things like the Wells class, if you remember, ended up there first.
Rising cruise liner ended up there.
Yep. So,
I should point out that Tribble has since been taken down, and most likely because of this.
I bet it is. I bet it's because they were like, darn it.
So the other not controversial bit of news that we've got is the Odyssey uniforms have been announced to are being made available for one and all as the new Starfleet standard, which is super awesome news. I mean, this was like the one concern I had with the announcement of the Odyssey uniform being made the standard uniform, is that not everyone had it. Well, apparently everyone is now getting it, and from a specific source who does not want to go on record, stating he believes that the intention is to get it into the Foundry. We can't actually check to see if it did make it in on Tribble because Tribble's locked down. But we're certainly hoping that this will get put into. Also, apparently, the Borderskew uniform is being made available for all KDF characters.
Updated.
And updated.
And it has to be known that both these uniforms are getting new pieces. However, Borderskew still missing a few, apparently.
Well, it'll be interesting to kind of see how things get out once we can get in there and test.
Yeah. And I like I really love the announcement of the addition that those of us who did spend the dilithium and energy credits to get the uniforms, it wasn't expensive, certainly, but those of us who did spend that to get the uniforms through our fleets, I love the announcement that they're coming up with something totally new, and if we had purchased the Odyssey uniform before, we're getting it.
No, I definitely could not have wished for a better outcome to this, and I want to say kudos to Cryptic. I know with the Odyssey uniforms being a fleet exclusive, it probably wasn't the easiest decision, but no, I'm definitely very pleased. No complaints on this end on that.
I agree. Yeah, Drogan notes in the chat room, they are all said to be being a work in progress, the new stuff, but that it will be ready for the launch of Season 9.5. That's what I saw in all of the notes that I read today on the Tribble patch notes.
All right, so getting into some of the stuff that has been not quite so great. It's been announced that a number of zones are going away.
We're in one right now.
Yeah, so one of the two zones that are going away is all exploration clusters are going away. Apparently, it's been said by Gecko and other developers that the missions were horrible. It was leading to a ton of confusion from new players coming in. It was also said that the sum total of all of the exploration missions, and you got to remember there are hundreds of different exploration missions, takes up a rather hefty chunk of hard drive space, and they just see it as an opportunity to really slim down on some of that. Of course, the downside is that we're going to lose a few things. I mean, as we were trying to test out earlier, there's things like the first contact missions. I don't know if that'll ever be resurrected anywhere else.
I'm going to push for it to be.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess that we're not going to ever see those in the form that they're in anymore, which I'm kind of okay with. In their own way.
They were so rarely played.
I'm kind of okay with it. I played them all the time, believe it or not. They're kind of one of my favorite missions in the game.
Yeah, but I mean,
same here.
Once you played one, it all kind of went the same.
Yes and no, because they were missions you actually had to pay attention and read.
Yeah.
The first contact ones, anyway. Not the procedure, like the map we're in right now. I would fully support anyone who argues that the map we're in right now is a pile of, garbage. These procedurally generated maps are tough to argue for them being good. But things like the first contact missions actually added something to the game that didn't exist anywhere else. So.
Yeah, and I mean, especially they represented Cryptic's attempt to make non-combat missions. Which, I mean, is definitely something that should be applauded.
Yeah.
Even if they were something that the vast majority of players didn't even know about.
Right. Well, you had to be level, 3 in diplomacy before you start seeing them?
Well, I mean, you also had to talk to Sugihara, and almost no one ever does. Because he's not really a normal contact.
Right.
There is one silver lining out of all of this, and this comes via the Priority 1 interview with Captain Gecko. And that is that Gecko, well, this isn't a plan, but he was asked about the possibility of converting the doors for the exploration clusters into Foundry doors. And his answer was, well, that would be pretty easy to do. It may be something we consider.
Huh.
So
I did not hear that far into the interview, apparently, or I missed that somehow.
yeah, so it would definitely be something nice, because I mean, I know how many times have we had missions that are just supposed to take place somewhere kind of outside the normal explored space. And those could work very well for missions like that.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I have to say the other thing I will be missing, though, are the type of mission that we're in right now, which are these scan anomaly ones, particularly with the crafting revamp coming. Because,
yeah, I mean...
Well, here's the thing. I've been doing extensive testing on Tribble. It is almost impossible to find crafting resources. And they're even putting them on social maps now, and it's hard to find them. So...
I would almost want to... I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking about this, and I would almost say I would love to see kind of the same allows you to fly around to scan. They just removed all of the missions themselves, and then maybe kept a few around, but allowed them to be like Foundry doors. So you have a bunch of unlabeled planets inside of in the exploration cluster that are only available if you have the Foundry mission.
So of all of the things that are changing with this, honestly, the moving the large exploration clusters into an interactable on the sector map is the one that bothers me the least. As long as that interactable still has access to the DOF missions that were available within the cluster, to the
that's what they said the primary purpose of the door was.
Yeah, that's the primary point of it. As long as I don't love the maps generated by the Genesis engine. In fact, I kind of dislike them.
Well, I keep thinking of that one quote from Star Trek 3 is like, Genesis doesn't work. I can't believe they'd kill us for it.
So I don't mind getting rid of the exploration missions. The only one I'm really going to miss is the first contact missions, which in my mind, there is the possibility that will be moved. If a first contact mission comes up for you in your mission list, that the interact you'll fly up to the cluster, hit the interact, and start the mission.
Nope, that's not happening, Hippie. They deleted them last patch.
Aw, bummer. That makes me sad.
It makes everyone sad.
But anyway.
Well, something I would like to point out, though, is that we are still a month away from 9.5 going live. Uh-huh. It's not like they aren't giving us a ton of time to get our feedback in and really kind of pose suggestions and put a voice to some of these things. Now, that said, I don't want to... It would make me sad to watch everyone go out and start raging about it. I don't think that's a constructive form of feedback, and I don't think it does us or the developers any good.
It's not, and right now Smirk is threatening martial law on the forums for behaving that way.
Yeah, which...
It's totally pointless to make personal attacks against someone. We don't have any idea what constraints or what sort of, I like to call them marching orders, the devs have gotten. They may have been told, we need you to create this thing, we need you to work within these. We have no idea. And so to make any kind of personal attacks is just silly. It's just, I think that the total combination of whatever brought about this crafting system
and
has stumbled down a terrible path.
Well, I should point out, I really want to point out, I mean, if anyone has not listened to the Priority 1 interview, they should.
It's worth it.
Yeah, it's very clear that what we see currently is not the final implementation. There is a lot of stuff Gecko talks about that is not system yet. So it's very clear.
Heck, I'll even say this, just in the 2 patches we've had, we've already had leaps and bounds of improvement.
Of difference.
Yeah, I mean, and I started out, really not being thrilled about this update, and I have actually been, with more I learn about it, though, I've been meddling. The crafting system itself has kind of moved up from I don't think this is going to work, to this could work, but I think it could use some improvements. Which, I mean, is really, a huge step up.
Well, the big thing is that everybody, especially once they reach endgame, which for anybody who pays a subscription can be done in 3 days, they complain about not having anything to do. The change in the system will add something to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And as a knock-on bonus, there's a very good possibility that we're going to get functionality added to the gateway system, which is another thing that's been completely neglected.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently they're making the changes to the UI are also opening up the potential for that to make it into the gateway that was talked about so long ago.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently there was some...
Yeah, it had to do with the way the system's interlinks were, that it couldn't be expressed neatly in a web UI.
And, even with these new changes, I think there are things that they could do to clean up the DOF system. Because, for instance, the whole going to your bridge or department heads is a little clunky. It's a holdover from a Band-Aid change they made because people couldn't find the missions they wanted. So I would love to see that kind of stuff cleaned up. And, really the whole system streamlined just a little bit.
But it's important to remember, this is an alpha, not even a beta. It's an alpha.
Yeah, seriously. They are literally trying to get it to us early so that we can provide feedback on this. It's not like they're trying to ram it down our throats. You don't put a product out.
Not this time. They're not
a month early to ram the people down their throats. No, that's to give them time for them to assimilate feedback and try and improve the system.
Now, of course, we do still need to put the caveat out there that regardless of how much feedback they get, it will probably still go live in a certain state and change to meet what they discover after it goes live, because they've done it with every other system almost.
Well, and that's another thing, is that the devs have already kind of been foreshadowing that this is not the end of the crafting system update. This is just the beginning. So
it kind of has to change once it goes live too, because for as much testing and as much stress testing as they get people to do on Tribble, that's not like putting this in front of, however many players are going to start using it on holodeck. That breaks things faster than testing on Tribble ever will. So
yeah, I'm sure that the Tribble testers are at best in the thousands.
Yeah, at best.
I might generously, maybe it gets up to tens of thousands, but I'm skeptical.
Mm-hmm. Only when there's an expansion coming.
Yeah. I'll just wait. Okay, so do we want to move on to the other update?
Other parts of it, sure.
Yeah. The other part of the maps that are getting removed is Memory Alpha is being retired with this new crafting update. And this one, obviously, is a little bit bigger deal to the Foundry because there are Foundry doors, there are NPCs, there are interactable objects.
If I'm not mistaken, it's 4 doors and 3 NPCs, or the other way around.
I thought they had a couple consoles in there.
And on top of that, there's also several diplomacy missions that are exclusive to Memory Alpha as well.
True.
So again, more non-combat.
Yes, but Kiyoshi has been reassigned to the Enterprise, so he shouldn't be hanging out there anyways.
Right.
No.
Looking for his Jumja sticks.
Yeah, and I get that one being removed, but there's no reason we can't keep the Ferengi guys around. There's...
Well, that was in the Priority 1 interview. Al said that, it hadn't crossed his mind, I don't think, but when one of them brought up the question, I think it was one of them brought up the question of what happens to the Ferengi commodity broker that's there. He mentioned he'll be moved somewhere, probably Drozana or something, so.
Yeah, but those missions are tied in with all the other NPCs there, like Commander Romaine and so forth.
I know.
I don't know,
So that's 400 diplomacy points that are going away.
Maybe they could do something like transpose it over to, say, K7? K7 could use some more content.
So I guess the easiest way to say what I feel about the idea of getting rid of memory alpha is that there is too much content from too many different places in the game. There are diplomacy missions there, as people have said. There are commodity brokers there that have prices that are specific to memory alpha. There are Foundry mission doors and interactables on the map. Just because crafting is changing and going away doesn't mean that the map needs to go away. I will agree with some people who say the map is not the prettiest one in the universe.
It is the most god-awful ugly map, short of some of the randomly generated ones.
Woohoo! Cast grabbed it and ran with it. Yeah, I'll agree that it's not but if there's not anything there to replace it with all of the content that takes place there, even if it's not content that a lot of people play, it is one of the only places to get those kind of diplomacy missions. And it sucks. It just sucks that with nothing on the plate or announced to replace it, they're taking it away and getting rid of it.
I know, I mean, I kind of got the impression that it wasn't something that the devs had really considered, especially the Foundry portion. I mean,
The Foundry portion, no, but I'm sure they didn't consider it, actually, in my mind.
Yeah,
I'm positive they didn't consider it because Gecko wasn't aware of that commodity broker. He's probably not aware of that diplomacy mission. I think they just saw Memory Alpha as, this is the crafting map. Well, crafting we're moving into UI. Well, let's just get rid of the map. And as I pointed out in the pre-show, and for those of you who follow around on Twitter, Taco Fangs didn't even know the map was getting deleted until I mentioned it to him on Twitter. That's how little discussion there has actually been about Memory Alpha's removal. That the environment artists aren't aware of it until we tell them.
Well, I mean, Taco Fang's not knowing about it, there really wasn't any reason for him to know about it unless he was working on the map.
Right.
I mean, he's somewhat low level, and he's often kind of expressed that he only knows what he needs to know to work on.
Yeah, of course.
But I mean, one of the concerns... I'm sorry, go ahead.
The point I'm making is that it's not just him who said that they're kind of, Thomas the Cat. I made a point of, why don't we just keep Memory Alpha and it can have a console that bonuses our ground crafting while we're there, so that there's a reason to go there. And Thomas the Cat favorited that tweet, and I'm thinking, okay, so at least one of the devs admits there's things we can do with this map.
Yes, but he also did that because he's losing his job once Memory Alpha goes away.
That's true.
We won't have our wonderful fourth wall breaking, what is he, a commander?
Yeah, Commander Monroe.
Commander Maroney, yeah.
And that's the other thing that made that map wonderful. There's a little bit of fourth wall breakage from one of the devs popping in. I mean,
and that was from before he was a dev. That was his payment for
part of his payment for the minigame.
Yep. There are lots of little nods like that to, devs and community managers. I mean, I'm not sure if it's still there, but the USS I don't know, Brandon Feltzer.
Yeah, still there.
That's part of Task Force Omega. So you'll see things like that in the game.
So the thing that kind of bugged me about this is kind of an overarching problem, and something that we've been seeing for a while, is there isn't really any Foundry consideration at the higher management levels. And I don't mean that I'm expecting them to suddenly want them to spike up development. Not that I would hate them doing that, but it's just the fact that they make these changes and it doesn't even occur to anyone that there's Foundry doors on that map.
Yeah, that's the reason that we're the Foundry Roundtable, and that's the reason that I have an issue with this change, actually. Them not having a lot of consideration for things with the Foundry is that comes back. My feeling on that comes back to how is that any different today than it was yesterday kind of feeling. But when that lack of consideration goes so far as to
Now,
destroy Foundry doors. I mean, the only response that has been given to what is going to happen to those Foundry doors and interactable NPCs and things that start missions there is, well, everything will have to be moved to a space door outside of Memory Alpha. That's not an acceptable answer. That lack of consideration is, we have a spotlight mission that uses a door on that map. Cryptic and the community management team and the people that put together the spotlight missions decided that one of the Foundry missions that starts on Memory Alpha, that you go there, is one of the best examples of the use of the Foundry, enough so that to put it into the spotlight. And now they're just getting rid of it. That's why I feel like the lack of consideration hurts so much in this case.
I actually kind of had to vent. When I kind of got to thinking about this, and I actually wrote down this page-long Word doc, all of my thoughts, and the general consensus of it ended up being, because I'm not a downer kind of a person.
Mm-hmm.
Go figure. But it kind of came down to, I think they are missing opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't think of the Foundry at that high level, they miss opportunities to tie the Foundry back into the game itself and have the game benefit from the Foundry. We've talked about it before. There is nothing even close to a Foundry tutorial in the game. A new player has no way of discovering the Foundry other than hearing Smirk talk about it, or stumbling into the Foundry tab, which is an arcane mess. So it seems like, on one level the Foundry doesn't get a ton of plays, but at this another level, why are they not getting a ton of plays? I don't think it's because of a lack of interest in UGC. I think it's because the Foundry isn't well integrated. And I think a lot of that stems back to it not being considered at that high level. And it kind of brings back to that age-old question that we kept going about who is the Foundry dev. And I've decided that was the wrong question. We're not looking for a Foundry dev. We're looking for a Foundry person, someone who can bring up these points and kind of has at least some understanding of what is the Foundry, how does it work, what can it do, and what could it do? Because
yeah, I'm not looking, I think you're right. I'm looking for someone who, when the meeting is happening, where people are saying, okay, so we're going to delete Memory Alpha, let's think about this, that I want to know that there is someone at that meeting that says, before we do that, we should check for all diplomacy missions. We should check if there are any Foundry doors or anything on the map. I want someone who does that. Yeah. I don't need a dev to work on the Foundry. I just want someone in...
Yeah, we need a voice in management, and not to get more dev time, but to work the Foundry in.
Well, and here's kind of the problem, though. Who was in on that meeting to make the decision? Gecko was there. You assume D'Angelo was there.
It'd be kind of hard to do without him.
Who else... Who else would be involved in that in order to be the person to say, oh, hey, wait. The thing is we don't know what their process is for making these decisions.
That's right.
And that's part of the reason why I said I was upset by the fact that Taka wasn't aware. I understand he might not be in that meeting, but was no one on the environment team told about this? You'd think they would be the people to know that before a map gets deleted.
I would think, actually, it would be systems people. The people that are going to have to bring it
would be
out
systems. It might have been a content person. Because, Gecko, or Tumor Boy isn't doesn't work with, the missions. He creates the maps themselves. And then the content people make the missions.
Right.
Which means somebody like Jesse, then, potentially.
Yeah. Or Kate Bankson, or
yeah. So
you just need someone who knows where the doors are. Is the point that I was coming from.
What I'm looking for is someone in management who is in the know when it relates to the Foundry and doesn't look at it just as an afterthought. or knows how things are going to affect and how the systems relate to each other. And on a very high level. I mean, Takafangs can spout out to me how a Foundry map works on a technical level and what is required in asset importation and all of this stuff, like on a scale that would have all of our heads spinning. But he doesn't understand like any other aspect of the Foundry or how it relates to the whole. So, I mean, I think what really set this off, though, was Neverwinter had put out a notice that they were giving out companion rewards to Foundry authors as a way to kind of incentivize Foundry mission creation. And I kind of just saw that. I was like, look at them. They're doing all of these things. They're not huge things. I mean, their Foundry development has dropped off quite a bit since they've gotten into full launch too, but it's an integrated portion of their game.
That's the difference. That's the difference, and that's why when good things happen for Neverwinter, I've stopped feeling like the step kid who doesn't get the cool new toy.
Yeah. So, I mean,
It's integrated there. It wasn't integrated here from the games.
I don't believe.
I know. I mean, part of the reason why I think they've got a thriving. I mean, I don't really think they have as much of a thriving community Foundry-wise as us because we've just been around longer. But they also have a community that's getting fresh blood, and they're not having the same problems we are because of these incentives. For instance, do you know that there's an incentive for reviewing new missions? Holy crap, that's been an issue for us for the last couple of years.
Yeah,
and they solved it day one.
But I mean, even more than that, it's just the fact that it's considered in the overall game design. And really, I mean, look at the potential here. I mean, that's really all I would say to Cryptic is look at the potential here, and look at what it could be.
So the reason I think they don't see the potential here is because the community of people who create missions is, one, it's small, and two, it's fractured. That's something that actually is a topic that I've been thinking about. I haven't known how to put it into words, but this made me realize it is one of the reasons is that we are a small community that doesn't, they don't see the immediate return from it. And it's also a very fractured community. There are so many authors that I have never spoken to once. And for such a small community, you would think, hey, we all know each other, but that's just not true, and when a small community is, fractured and doesn't have one voice, I mean, it's tough.
But I mean, how many times have we seen like a reviewer for a gaming site or a new player come in and just rave about how they've never found the Foundry before and how it's this great undiscovered gem.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, I mean, but as long as it isn't even on the minds of management, and again, I cannot stress enough, I am not asking for more development time. I'm asking for consideration.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it isn't on the mind, and you're looking at how you can integrate it into everything else that you're doing, it's not going to receive its full potential, and it'll just be another lost opportunity. I mean, I'm not someone who's going to like rag on Cryptic for what they've done wrong in the past or what they haven't done, because I don't feel like that is worthwhile. But it should kind of be an opportunity to do more in the future.
I think there is always an opportunity for constructive. I think what you're saying, I agree with you 100%, and I think it's a very constructive, going forward piece of advice. It's not, it's certainly not a, hey, you did this wrong or whatever. No, it's a, this bit could be better. Yeah,
I mean, at the end of that Word doc I wrote, and I'd kind of written it like I was going to post it, but I don't know that I ever will. Basically, it ended with an appeal to the community to not take this as a point of rage.
Right.
Going to rage doesn't help us. It doesn't help the community. And really, I mean, consistent determination is about the only best thing I can think of for the community. Is like,
I agree.
keep it up. I mean, be respectful. Don't force it down their throat. What we need is to convince people of its value, not force it on them.
Right.
Anyway, I mean, at this point, I think I'm starting to talk in circles. So,
So I think we have about covered the news.
there was one last thing, and this was actually a last
Okay.
minute addition to the news. Smirk has just announced that Friday he's going to be doing another Foundry live stream. He's going to be playing through the whatever mission the new Spotlight is. So,
Fed mission this week, right?
yep, we're
Yep,
doing
Fed
Fed.
mission.
Spotlights are finally returning after the downtime and all the work with getting all of the ESD missions respotlighted. I
Think it's good
believe
news.
it's at Friday at 2:30 Pacific. So Foundry authors tune in, Foundry players tune in, because I'm sure it'll be a great mission. It's always awesome for Smirk to put a little attention our way.
Mm.
And you never know. I mean, the last time they did this, a lot of new people discovered the Foundry.
Yep. It helps new people discover the Foundry because his streams are really well attended because he gets to give away free Zen and stuff. So.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's not like we don't have devs who support the Foundry. I mean, it's just could use some in higher positions. Anyway, I think that's about it for news.
Okay, so then let's move on to what we are working on. Let's start with SirBoulevard. What have you been working on, man?
Well, I mentioned this last time I was on that I've had to put Sansa Gorner on the side burner because I can't freaking figure it out. But I'm still working on the OKEG thing that I mentioned. Him going crazy and starts shooting his own people. I've also been doing a little bit of just some basic map playing around with the new assets we got. But that's pretty much where I'm at.
That reminds me of there was a bug that showed up in Starfleet Academy where the Commandant of Starfleet Academy would suddenly jump up and start trying to shoot out the window. And so I actually got a screenshot of this Commandant of Starfleet Academy kept repeatedly shooting out the window. His phaser.
That's pretty fun.
I love that screenshot.
What about you? What about you, Dragoon? Have you gotten any good work done on Map 8 this week?
Oh, have I made progress on Map 8? I, in fact, finished the rough draft of Map 8. It's now fully playable from beginning to end. It's good enough that everything I want to happen is generally in place. The dialogue could probably stand a bit of polish, but other than that, it's reasonably playable. And I've actually moved on to Map 9, and am most of the way through that. I know it seems kind of weird in comparison to Map 8 that took months and months and months and months, but maps 9, 10, and 11 are a whole lot simpler. I mean, they're more like standard Foundry maps.
I just really like hearing you say that Map 8 is now fully playable beginning to end.
Yeah.
I bet that's a really good feeling.
It is. I mean, it's a great map. I mean, it's really complicated under the hood because I wanted of all of this like choice and all of these mechanics that I wanted to introduce. But at the same time, it's like a very exciting map because that's where the climax kicks in. It's where you have like the big battle and you have the escape, and it just powers right into Map 9, which is the final escape, and then to Map 10, where you're back at your ship and then trying to escape. So, I mean, and then Map...
You're into the very like climactic
Oh,
action.
yeah, so
and that's...
Oh yeah, basically it's the falling action leading into the end.
Nice.
The other cool thing I did this week is I, after a year and a half, finally submitted part 1 for review or for spotlighting.
Yay! like pause. Yay! It's about time.
Yeah. Well.
Have you finally gone back over it enough times as a perfectionist and said, okay, I can't do anymore.
Are you kidding? Since I submitted, I've pulled it twice and quickly made a couple changes and resubmitted it. So I think I'm saying it's done. It's done. It's done. It's good enough.
And just to be sure, you didn't use proto matter in the Matrix, right?
No, but part 2 has heavy amounts of proto matter. Seriously, I cheat. I cheat royally in part 2.
Yay.
That said, I mean, I'm really excited about Tour 2 because, like I said, I'm on the slide down and out, which means I'm not far from beta testing for part 2.
Awesome.
As soon as you can play the mission from beginning to end, I'm going to start sharing it with people. Get some feedback.
And then the universe ends.
Yeah, the universe cannot exist where I have part 2 done.
Now you just have to make a part 3 and go on Valve time.
Oh, there is a part 3.
Don't worry, it'll be coming 2015.
Yeah, about right.
Say 15 or 50.
15.
Might want to try. Might want to push it back to 2016.
All right. We'll push.
Maybe I'll have it ready for the anniversary of Star Trek.
A 1,000-year anniversary.
I was hoping for 50, but cross my fingers.
So Castmodean, the man who doesn't play any Foundry missions, you must have time to create many of them. What have you been working on, man?
Oh, I've created many of them that are not anywhere near publishing yet. In fact, actually, the first thing I did is when we got the Earth Space Dock stuff, I went in and I made a quick change to probably actually my earliest mission, which is digging in the dust, or excuse me, digging in the past. And I started working again on the sequel to it, Digging in the Dust, which, to give you an idea, might actually be older than Shadows of Midas 2, because the maps predate Season 4.
Wow.
And in fact, when I touch things in there, it gripes about the Season 4. Ooh, you touched something. I need to do some recalculation and stuff. Would you like me to do that?
Oh, wow.
No. So, yeah, I basically have reached the point where I'm aligning items on the map has become such a tedious chore that I am basically rebuilding the map.
Yeah, we got so much more to work with now.
I know, right?
And to give you an idea, the last time I thought I was going to have this done was summer of 2012.
Well, you're only 2 years late. I mean, you're working on George R.R. Martin time.
No, because I haven't killed anybody yet.
No weddings?
I don't have any. No, I leave the weddings to one of our other users, but no. No, I have not killed any beloved characters yet. I have not killed any hated characters yet. So
can you beat Drogon's 20-some unfinished missions?
No, I cannot at the moment. That's only because I have, but that's only because I have 16 slots at the moment, and only have 15 of them filled and 3 published.
Yeah, season 4 was the big huge downtime, or the Foundry crash, wasn't it?
It's what it's what us old timers refer to as we don't talk about season 4.
So yeah, that was well before even part 1.
That season 4 for anybody who wasn't around back then, when the Foundry was still a young and innocent creature, and
wait, are you talking about the thing that you said we never talk about?
Well, I have to give reason why we don't talk about it. It was a young and innocent creature who was horribly molested by the season update. It broke a lot of how assets worked, and everybody started massively piling in and unpublishing their mission. Broke things worse. And it was 3 months before they got everything fixed to a point where they could let us back in.
And this for anyone that is curious is why we have these elaborate safeguards for every seasonal update, is to prevent something like that from happening again.
Exactly.
Once he started speaking, our chat room went crazy. Like, don't talk about it, man. It was the dark time. It was awful. Come on, man. It's like Fight Club. You don't talk about it.
Cast, I think you've just doubled everyone's psychiatric bills.
It's true. And let's be fair. At least Fight Club didn't deflower anyone, as opposed to this update.
Well, you know what? To get back on track, I have been working on Cold Start. Not as much as I have been the last 2 weeks. I've had more things going on in my life outside of gaming that have kept me away from editing, which, you know what, it's summertime and it's beautiful out, so I don't mind that at all. But I have been working on Cold Start a great deal, and where I previously had an Admiral's office and kind of waiting room area done on the area of Earth space dock that I'm building. Now I have the Admiral's office, a greeting lounge, and a very good start on the engineering section of the deck. Like I said, I didn't have as much time to work in there as I would have liked to, but yeah, I guarantee you I'm going to make the Deferi cool. I really am, people. I'm not kidding. I'm going to make them cool.
Let me guess, Breen.
Yeah, there will be Breen involved. I know, that's such a leap, really.
I was making a pun on cool.
Well, the mission is called Cold Start, so and hopefully we'll have a lot of we'll have multi-layered meanings. The title, that's my hope. So, but yeah, working on the old map of Earth space dock and using walls and using various props in different ways to kind of repurpose what we used to have and make it into something else that doesn't feel like that big circular, deck of what we used to have is really fun. Actually, it's been a lot of fun working on that.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of space in those corridors that you can do some serious redressing.
Honestly, my greeting lounge where you meet a prominent NPC in the mission is built in a corridor. It's built completely in a corridor, and it's roomy. So,
didn't the original ESD have that one lounge that you got to by Club 47?
Club 47 itself was kind of a lounge, I thought, in the old one.
Well, it was just kind of an open area with like a table and a bar, and then there was that door that you went, and then it took you to the lounge portion, which was like a separate area.
Yeah, it's a second level.
Yeah, it had that
you
S-shaped
walked up
couch.
to a turbo lift.
I was not a player when the old Club 47 existed. I've only seen it in the Foundry.
Yeah, it had like windows, and it had that S-shaped couch that we have at the Foundry.
Cool.
There was actually also
just like season 4, don't talk about First Earth space stuff.
Hey, you know what? That map actually has a lot of really cool uses. Yeah. I've seen some great missions that use that map in weird and interesting ways. So
I almost feel like we should make a Foundry mission that does historical tours of the original Earth space dock. It's like, come on, kids, this is what the game used to look like.
A hollow history tour of the original Earth space dock.
That said, I wouldn't mind seeing the space model come back as a different starbase. And it was a decent model as long as it wasn't space dock.
It was huge.
And as long as it was in a Cardassian sector.
Yeah.
I bet you could redress that as like a super base or maybe like an alien base.
I've redressed it in a now deleted mission. It was supposed to be a starbase over Kate, and I just put another planet over Earth.
Yeah, that's what you have to do.
Well, you could always revisit Bread and Circuses.
Oh, God.
So, there was one thing that we did forget to ask each other before the show started, and that is, who has a review for us tonight? I don't, for a reason that I'll talk about when we get into discussion topics. But
I'm
has
afraid I
anyone...
don't. I've been on a Foundry authoring binge.
Aw.
I actually do.
Huzzah! We have a
Just
review.
just give me a second to actually find the name of the mission again.
Awesome.
Well, in that case, I'm going to break a taboo of my own and say that I actually played a Foundry mission.
That's twice on our show you've admitted that now.
I am guilty of having played Medusa's Revenge by Duke of Rock, which if anybody has played his Medusa series, first off, I totally suggest playing his Medusa series, especially if you want to go and play Medusa's Revenge, which is a follow-on after episode thing to the series. I won't get into a whole lot of detail. I will definitely say that his map design continues to be some of the greatest stuff that you'll find. Definitely worth checking out his duck blind that he builds on a planet alone. But I would recommend playing the Medusa series first before you go into it, so you actually know who the major characters are and why you're talking to these people in the first place.
Very cool.
Yeah,
I can't
cool.
believe that you admitted to playing a Foundry mission. I'm still in shock.
I know, and this is going to be saved on the internet for posterity. I'll never live it down.
I know, right? Look, you've got Captain PF Dennis in the chat room, all beside himself.
Is he going all Sanford and Son on me?
I don't know. He said you played a Foundry mission that wasn't his, and he's asking if anybody wants a job.
Well, to be fair to him, I didn't have time to play any of his missions because Duke's took as long as his missions do, so I only had time to play one thing in a day. And PF Dennis will know what I'm talking about because I always give him grief about how long his missions are.
Awesome.
I don't know.
With that said, totally go play Class Suspish 1 through 3 if he's got them published at the moment.
Okay.
They are totally worth it, but be ready to go on more than a 3-hour tour.
Right on. Boulevard, have you found the name of your mission?
Yes, I have.
We'll actually get 2 mission reviews in.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be covering Shadows of the Past by Backyard Serenade. If you guys, it's actually on Starbase UGC's list of great missions, by the way. So it's actually really good. It's a Bajoran mission. So
I am legally obligated to sneer at that.
Well, I'm going to say this. It's actually a good Bajoran mission because it's a time travel mission, too. Basically, what happens is you are given orders from Starfleet to rendezvous with a Bajoran cruiser that's bringing an orb back to Bajor. And so you go to rendezvous with them, you find out they've been attacked by True Way. And so you board the ship, you talk with, all the militia people and so forth. Then you go down. After a while, you go downstairs. You get boarded. You get attacked again by the True Way, and then you go down to go protect the Vedic. But the Vedic actually gets killed before you get to her, and her dying words are in a note to you, telling you that something important is going to happen. And the orb reacts, and you end up on DS9 the day that the Cardassians are withdrawing from Bajor.
So this is like a week before DS9 started?
About 3 days, actually.
Sounds about right.
So the station is literally on fire. There's parts falling down all over it. He even went so far as to redress the promenade. Like, you remember in the DS9 episodes, they had like the grates separating the promenade, the upper levels and the lower levels, and the sections of it. Like, he got all of those in there. Like, it looks like Terra Nor the day that it's been ransacked. And you end up finding out that the Vedic that you had been going to rendezvous with is on the station at this time, and she has a Cardassian husband. And he's not part of the occupying force, he's just a civilian who happened to live on the station. And they have a kid together. And so you go to talk with them, and the you have to fight your way there, because there's still a few, like, the Bajor militia are still trying to put out fires and stuff. Stuff's not working on DS9, and you end up you're trying to get to the docking ring where the guy is, and you end up in the habitat ring because the turbo lifts are all broken. And this is the part where I absolutely fell in love with this mission. Was this section of the habitat ring is completely custom built. It's a custom built. It looks like it's DS9's habitat ring from the show. And you're having to negotiate through it and try and, like, hack in through doors so you can break into the next section. And there's a few mysteries and stuff along the way that, like, there's a Federation shuttlecraft that no one knows why it's there. It's implied that it's actually a Q ship taken by the Cardassians. And you eventually find, the past version of the Vedic and her husband and their son. And by the way, this is the first time I had to actually seen a child NPC in game, and this guy got it down. I mean, there's a tutorial on it now, but the mission is from late 2012, back when we had no idea how to do it, and this guy did it. And you basically have to pose as one of the captains of the era, so you can sign the amnesty order for the Cardassian dad and the son, so that they can leave without being killed by the Bajorans, and so that they can not go back to Cardassia. And then you end up finding the orb in a kind of a makeshift shrine, and you're transported to the present, and you find a note, read that note from the Vedic, who's pretty much telling you about the whole incident and thanking you for it, knowing that what was going to happen to her. And then you find out that her son is now one of the leaders of the True Way, and the mission kind of ends there, because it's a part 1, apparently, and I haven't played part 2.
Oh, be interesting to see how he explains a half Bajoran ending up in the True Way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, interesting, but at the same time, it could be pretty darn cool, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds like a lot of thought went into this and work.
Yeah.
And for me personally, what sold it, it's not even the story that sold it, it's the environment that sold it. Because while the main story is about, this Vedic and her son, the part that really makes it an enjoyable mission is the fact that it's getting a chance. It feels very much like a prequel to Emissary. Like, you feel like you're on DS9. You're seeing the struggles that went through of putting the station back together before Cisco shows up.
Mm.
And I mean, they did such a great job. Like, you look at the DS9 map and it's redressed so well, and you can't even believe it's the same map.
I like when people can do that. I really do.
Yeah. I mean,
it takes a lot to redress a map and make it unrecognizable.
I mean, as much as we complain about limitations of the Foundry, I'm a firm believer that limitations breed creativity. And just the length that authors will go to really try and create something unique within the confines of what we have to work with, I mean, is always an impressive sight.
I agree.
Indeed, and there's one part of this map that always sticks out in my mind whenever I think about that, and that is on the Promenade map. You know where the multi-purpose room is with the exchange and the doctor and all that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he redressed that into a little alcove where there's one of the old DS9 turbolifts, because we have that as an asset, and it looks like it's actually part of the DS9 set. I mean, it looks like it belongs there.
Right on. Cool. So, is that it we have for reviews tonight? Let's move on. Let's move on to some discussion topics.
Wasn't Cass supposed to be doing a review?
Well, he did kind of. I mean, if do you have more you wanted to say about it, Cass?
Well, unfortunately, since I'm reviewing a mission that requires like 5 previous episodes. It's kind of one of those, go play these first, but it's really cool once you get here. But
cool.
no, his map design is wonderful. The story is a little involved, so set aside more than your average quick dilithium run in order to play it. But I totally recommend taking an afternoon and just blasting through all of the parts of the Medusa stories.
Right on. Isn't that, if I'm not mistaken, the Medusa series, we can now, like, finally play that again, right? Because wasn't one of those missions broken for the longest time?
Episode 4, I believe, was using the ice cave map that somebody edited and deleted like a third of the map as part of the space saving thing.
Right.
And that would kind of fall back on your argument about consideration of Foundry things, that apparently nobody realized that this map was linked to the Foundry, and when they went and fixed it, quote unquote, they broke it.
Yeah, when they went and saved space for themselves, it never crossed anyone's mind that doing that would affect however many Foundry missions use that map. Which,
to be fair, there's only 2 that I know of, but that's just because they complained the loudest.
Yep, I was going to say there's only two that had authors that were either still active or So let's move on to discussion topics. Who's coming to the table with one tonight? Who's got something to talk about?
Well, I had two topics in hand, but I think one of them I'll kind of save until Drogan is back with us, because I know it tied into a topic he wanted to talk about.
Okay, I know we had a couple of topics suggested by Drogan that I think we might save for him, because they're both really good topics, and I'd like to hear him weigh in on them. So
the other one I had in straight away was the challenges of starting in the Foundry. And really what I'm thinking with this is to kind of look at some of the challenges that new authors or even potential authors face, and advice for how to deal with them. So I kind of came up with a couple of things I could think of. First off, I've heard a number of people say they don't want to get into the Foundry because they can't come up with an idea. So I'm kind of curious about your guys' first Foundry experience. Did you come in with an idea, or is it something that you...
Yeah, I came in with an idea, but I'm a writer. I came in knowing that I wanted to tell a story. I would say that's almost the insurmountable problem, to be quite honest. And it's not the and I don't mean insurmountable in that you have to have a story in order to get started playing with the Foundry, but if you're not the sort of person who wants to tell stories, you're not going to... The Foundry is a storytelling tool. Yeah, some people have used it to create, shoot 'em up, shoot this many thing missions, but it's a storytelling tool. And if you're not the type of person that telling stories is an outlet for you and kind of like a fun pastime, I don't know that anybody can teach you that.
Well,
you know what I mean?
So my experience coming into the Foundry is exactly the opposite. I avoided the Foundry for a long time because I couldn't think of a story, or I didn't have like a specific story. I had a couple, every once in a while I might have an idea, but nothing that really felt like a workable story. And it wasn't until one day I finally decided, look, I'm just going to get in there and poke around. And I started playing around with things, and I started to notice that this section, there was this wall section, and it's like, that kind of looks like the front lip of like the Enterprise D. I was like, that's kind of cool. Well, can I kind of curve them around? I can kind of curve around them. And then I stuck some ramps on top and kind of curved that around. And suddenly I realized, well, wow, that looks a lot like a crashed starship. And that is where part 1 started. There was no plan for part 1 before that. It was all this organic development. that kind of came out of playing with the assets.
But I think you're the type of person who naturally likes to tell stories. Not having a story to tell is, well, I guess not having a story to tell shouldn't stop you from playing with the tool. But if you're not having a story to tell because you just don't like to tell stories, nobody can teach you to like to play, to like to tell stories. You either do or you don't.
Okay, well, I mean, obviously, if somebody just hates the idea of trying to tell stories, then obviously the Foundry is not for them. But I'm talking about people who are kind of intrigued by the Foundry, but just haven't really had that inspiration strike.
And playing with the tool, that's where I started too.
Yeah. So, I mean...
And see, for me, I came from the same spot as you, Dragoon. I started playing in the Foundry by I wanted to play with the tools at first. And I started experimenting with stuff. And then I kept going, and I realized I could put things together. And then eventually, from that, I wanted to tell a story from what I had created. I didn't want it to all have been for naught. And that inspired me to create something. Or I'd look at something and I say, oh, you know what? That gives me an idea for something. So my response is, yes, if someone isn't naturally inclined to a storytelling personality, they don't have a business being in the Foundry. But if you are that kind of person but you have no idea where to start, just playing around, make your own inspiration, and that will bring it to you.
I'll say this leads me to what, for me, was my biggest problem starting in the Foundry. See, I started in the Foundry twice. A year before I ever made my first mission, or almost a year before I ever made my first mission, I opened up the Foundry tool and I started to try to play around with it and figure it out. And I, after 40 minutes, closed it in frustration. Because the tool was not intuitive, the ways to do things were not intuitive, and I just stopped using it and went back to just playing the game. Then, like, however many months later, almost a year later, there was a story I wanted to tell. Yeah, it was for a contest KirkVat was sponsoring, but a story came into my head and I wanted to tell it. And in my mind, I went, okay, I'm smarter than a monkey. I can figure this out. And I really had to, because I'm not inclined toward the sort of editing that we have to do in the Foundry. It's not something that comes naturally to me. I had to really take a very long time learning the tool. My biggest barrier to the Foundry has been the fact that the tool is not intuitive and it was difficult to learn and therefore scared the crap out of me, and I ran away from it.
It's funny, you went right into my second point, which was people intimidated by the tool.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, yeah, it's different for me because, I mean, I'm a very technical person to begin with. So learning the tool, it was a lot easier for me. But, I mean, how do you, I mean, as someone who's kind of gone through that, how do you recommend people getting over the initial learning curve?
Stop thinking of the first things you do as art. That's how I got over it. When I first opened it up, I was opening it up because the fleet that I was in at the time, a fleet, when I first started the game a super long time ago, we wanted to do some mirror universe missions and we wanted to design them and everything. So I opened it up and I started trying to use it, and the issue was I was trying to make art from the moment that I opened it up. I wasn't just playing with a toy. The best advice I have for somebody who gets intimidated by the tool is to stop thinking of it as a tool. Stop thinking of it as an editor, and stop thinking of it as art, and just think of it as a toy, as another piece of this game that you play to have fun, and play with it and learn it at your own pace, and find your best way to learn.
I think what a lot of people kind of get tripped up on when they're first getting in is they come in with some kind of expectation of what they want to do, and if it's something that the tool isn't naturally designed to do, they'll run into a roadblock and become discouraged.
That happens too, I bet.
That happens a lot. Having sat in the Starbase UGC chat for as many years as I have, with people coming in and saying, "Hey, I want to do this, this, and this." No, you can't do that. Well, fine, and they just leave.
And they
Usually,
never do. Yeah.
usually our answer is no, you can't do that. But
Well, unfortunately, they quit. They rage quit before we can get to the but.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean,
But the thing I've always had, and it's sort of what Hippie just touched on. One of the authors I read, he was told many moons ago by one of his writing teachers that what you should start out doing is you should write 3 novels and throw them in the trash,
Yep.
and then look at publishing your 4th one. And that's kind of what you have to do, is just you don't have to start with a story. I mean, you just start with an idea. Like, okay, I want to blow up the engine room of a ship. Okay, so what? So you sit there, you build the map, you figure out how to do that. Now you have to go, why do I want to blow up this engine room?
Yeah.
And just kind of work either forwards or backwards from there. That's one thing I'd love to see. I'd love to see somebody start at the end of the mission and work backwards.
because I mean that's exactly how I kind of got started. Because it started, I built this crash starship. There was nothing else around it, but then I had to say, okay, why in the world did this ship crash?
It's an interesting. I mean, it's a very interesting way that stories get built, and I hear a lot of authors in the Foundry talk about they just start building a map and see where that leads them. I think that's really cool. I really do. I can't. I personally can't do that. But I do advise just playing with the toy.
Yeah, I mean, and definitely when you go into your first mission, go into it flexible. I mean, don't come in with this hard and fast, I need to do this, this, and this, and this, and this is the only way it'll work. Because you're going to run into those roadblocks, and you got to be flexible enough to say, okay, I can't do that. How else can I make this story work? I mean, well, maybe I need to take place in a different scene. Maybe I need to have them go about it a different way. Maybe you write the roadblock right into the mission. Is like, oh, we can't go that way. Something's blown and the corridor's collapsed. I mean, just have fun with it. I mean, just kind of explore it out and be flexible with it.
If Star Trek has not taught us anything, it's that story will find a way, even if it's highly implausible and breaks previously stated things. Story will find a way.
Yeah. I mean, how many times did Star Trek writers come up with these insane things or invent some new element to get them out of a situation they'd written themselves into?
And
Technobabble.
Technobabble. And the thing I always have to say about the limitations is, to quote, as Dr. House would call him, the great philosopher Jaggert, you can't always get what you want, but if you try, you'll get what you need. You can make
it work somehow.
Yeah, I mean, even now, because I like to redust maps a lot, a lot of the map layouts and designs will often dictate how my story flows. And I'll start that as the basis of how things are going to flow, and then build off from that and elaborate. And so the last thing I've got on here that we haven't touched on is the excuse, others do it much better than I can.
Others don't have whatever the idea is that's in your mind. That's all I have to say.
Jerks.
No, it is definitely an important thing because no two authors are ever going to be the same. Art is very personal.
Right. So I have that issue. Is because of my very self-admitted, it's not really a fear of technology, man. I love technology. It does some really cool stuff. I just have, it's not like even a stopping block necessarily. It takes me longer to figure stuff out. I mean, I was playing with mission creation for almost a year before I realized what triggers could do. And that's with watching, tutorials here and there. So it's so I often get to it much better feeling when I'm putting something together. But I don't think that's the kind of thing that should anyway stop you from writing something, because it to me anyway, as a writer, I feel like when I'm writing something that I really want to put out there, I've got something I want to say. And so just the fact that maybe I can't do as cool a trigger work as, the author over there shouldn't matter. Because I think all of us need to, in life, I think people need to accept that, often what we have to say, we undervalue ourselves. And people need to have more confidence in saying things. Like I write because I have something I want to say, and I'm not going to let my fear of not being as good stop me from saying it, if that makes any sense.
I mean, and I know.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I got a long one to go. You might want to go first, Drew.
Oh, I was just going to say is I would have and probably couldn't have ever made a Miranda Mayhem mission. I mean, it would be out of my style. It would be it just wouldn't be the way I write. So I mean,
and for example, like the Miranda Mayhem stuff, I'm writing that because I have something to say with it, and I'm glad that at least one reviewer, more than one, has mentioned it. But Kendra got it. Kendra understood that I was aiming to create a spot where there are strong female protagonists who exist in such a way that they're not hostage of the weak. They're not. She got it, basically, and that made me very happy. But again, that was despite my thoughts that I know people who could physically make this look so much better. I wasn't going to let the fact that I felt that way stop me from putting them down in some sort of structure.
No, and the point I was trying to make is that everyone brings themselves to the Foundry. So no one can make that mission that you're creating. No one else can make that mission that you're creating, because it'll be a reflection of you and your unique set of skills.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say this to the people who say, well, someone can do it better. My response is I just went through the process of getting out of that. I'm out of the four of us, I'm the youngest author here as far as a knowledge base in the Foundry goes. I mean, it was only 6 months ago that my Spotlight mission was even created. I had no idea how to do triggers. When I made my maps, I didn't use zero altitude. I didn't know what I was doing, bluntly. And, I look back on what I've created since then, and I go, I kind of want to take that down now and fix it. But I think about the progress I had to go through to get there. When I was making my first maps, I was doing it incredibly rough and tumble. I didn't, I wasn't paying attention to. I was eyeballing it the whole way. It was crap, to be blunt. I still go back and I look at videos of it or replay it myself. I go, ooh, unaligned walls, ah! And that's just... And I realize, now, looking back, and I'm like, okay, that was growing pains. I had to go through that to learn how to do it properly. Like you said, throw out the 3 books and then publish your 4th one. In my case, I was lucky because that was technically my second mission. My second book was actually decent. And when I was doing the 3rd one, I was already writing the 4th one, and took the stuff I learned from the 4th one and was fortunate enough to make the 3rd one up to the 4th one standards. So,
I just have to laugh when you were like, and I wasn't using zero altitude. It was 4 months of working in the Foundry before Zorbane typed the words, "Are you using zero altitude?" into the chat room.
I was actually thinking the same thing, because that city map in part 1 was built without zero altitude. I didn't know about it. And so I was going through and manually adjusting the height on every building to get them to line up, and spending days and days and days and days manually adjusting all of those buildings to get them the same height.
And this is where I go, ha ha ha, you children. Back in my day when I started working on Digging in the Dust, zero altitude didn't exist, which is
Back
part
in
of
my
the.
day, we had to walk uphill to 0 altitude, both
Uh,
ways.
In this
no,
now.
no, no, no. This we had what is now called legacy altitude,
Oh my
and
lord!
that is why that map is throwing such a huge fit, is because everything was built under legacy altitude, and when I switched it over to zero altitude, um, it's sort of like that bit in Ghostbusters where they're talking to the mayor and the police chiefs.
Ugh,
Yeah, it's
okay,
good times.
yeah.
And see,
Ugh.
this is what's important. You know, everyone says someone else can do it better. No, you know what? I wouldn't have gotten there if it wasn't for the help of all these wonderful people that I'm talking to in this chat room right now. The people who are in our Twitch chat room, the people on Starbase UGC chat, the people in Foundry Talk chat. I did not get here by myself. I got here with the help of others, and every new Foundry out there is going to come the same way. All of our knowledge is built on the shoulders of giants. Those giants are the community. So,
Yeah.
I think I can't think of a better way to end this discussion with new authors or people thinking about new authors. We have all been you. We all started where you were. And most of the times we will sympathize right there with you and offer any advice we can.
Except for the ones that we know that go diving in their dilithium bins.
And hey, in our chat room, I'm not sure who SFC 100 is, just realized he's not using 0 altitude, so I am super glad we're talking about that today. Yes, 0 altitude will help you if things aren't lining up on the y-axis. Yeah, 0 altitude. That would be my first advice to all new authors.
Yeah, it can be a pain.
That and click off the snap 2 buttons.
Oh God, yes.
Use
numbers. Math works, and I hate math.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a pain to find that first altitude, but once you have it, 0 altitude makes things way easier and more consistent.
Yeah, it's a very, very true thing.
I still something we need to make a sticky thread in the Foundry forums.
That's not a bad idea. Is like commonly asked questions for the Foundry. I bet you Smirker would be behind it.
Markhawkman's not here today, SFC 100. Neither is Drogan, interestingly enough. I have a topic for us to discuss, guys. And it's the reason that I didn't have a mission for review this week. It's because I've been spending time leveling a couple of my characters and playing some old cryptic content and playing some old cryptic missions. So the only thing I would have had to review is some old cryptic missions. And it occurs to me, this kind of goes back to our discussion a little bit about exploration clusters and the procedurally generated maps like the one that we're in and such, is that very truly when they say something like when we hear Al say things are just not up to the standard of what we currently are seeing in the game, is that their current approach is just to remove these things. And I would say from a story writing sense, had they not gone back and redone all of those starting missions, all of that starting content down the Klingon War arc, it's so much stronger now than it was because they remastered it. But previously there was stuff in there that, we've lost a mission from that arc and most people don't even notice, because it was so bad, actually, in so many ways. And there's a lot of the content that I've been playing that's like that is tedious, that either needs remastering and my topic, I guess, and the way that I apply this to the Foundry is, at what point do we need need to stop remastering old things? And, in your case, Dragoon, when do you, we've talked about this before in kind of a different way, I guess, is at what point do you just have to let it go and accept, that first Foundry mission you made is never going to be up to the standards of what you're making now? Or that, and at what point in the game does that, where does that apply to the Foundry? It's kind of a big nebulous topic. Sorry.
Well, you got to remember that your standards is a constantly moving target. Assuming you're staying active in the Foundry, you're hopefully always getting better at it.
Right.
But I know the saying is that art is never finished, only abandoned. Really, it's kind of up to the author, but at some point, you just got to say it's good enough because it'll never be perfect.
Yeah, I get, for instance, for me personally, I get why Cryptic is redoing it. They had a year to put out all of the content that was the story missions at the beginning of the game, and, well, there wasn't enough time to do it right, particularly since we know there was an entire arc that had to be scrapped because of J.J. Abrams. But the fact is, as authors, there's a point where we have to go, okay, it's good enough. For me, my general rule is the only reason I would go back and redo something is if you've learned something and it vitally will change the story on a aggressively more updated level, but it can't take more than a minuscule amount of your resources.
Okay, so I guess where I'm going with my question, now that I've heard a couple of responses, is at some point, aside from, art is never finished, just abandoned, or leave it out there, I'll be honest, if I could pull Spectre's episode 6 down and get it away from people seeing it, despite the fact that it's still giving me, a couple of hundred dill here and there, I would get rid of it because I don't feel like it's up to standard. And that's because my own standard of what I can achieve has gotten bigger. And I'm wondering, I personally have had a really negative reaction anytime Cryptic wants to remove content. We're sitting here in probably one of the second worst maps in game. I hate this asteroid belt. I've been in this exact asteroid belt. Oh wait, one other time they were brown. But I'm still sad that it's going away. And I've had bad reactions to Cryptic removing content, and yet the more that I play some of their old unremastered content, I understand why. And I start to say, on a certain level, I look at the top 50 missions list, and I've talked about the fact that I see there are more storyline things there and such, but there are also things that are just no longer supported. And in the entire missions list, there are authors that have just disappeared, and there are things I think they can get rid of, I guess, is where I'm coming from.
Yeah, but that's never going to be a popular option.
Yeah, I know.
See, for me, when it comes to accepting when something's good enough, as much as this map is absolutely horrible, and yes, it is horrible, it at least still serves a purpose. I've made this comment a number of times about the revamping crafting system. Getting rid of the exploration cluster speeds, it's going to be difficult for people to find crafting materials. These were the places we went to get them. As much as I hate to say it, these little 5 scan theme missions were vital to the game. They shouldn't be going away. Yes, the third Borg Dynasty thing, get rid of it. Dear God, get rid of it. But
I don't know, I always kind of feel like it's a piece of Stowe's history.
Yeah,
it is a piece of Stowe's. You know what? I want to say this. I want to make a mission now about the third Borg Dynasty just to keep it in game somehow. Because as much as it's a joke, it's become it's endearing in its stupidity.
So you hear that, Grand Nagus? You need to go out and replicate all of these missions as part of your dailies.
It
Third
is,
Borg Dynasty forever.
you know what?
Can I tell you something?
I have to admit, as much of a joke as it is, you are right that in its own way, the third Borg's dynasty has become a part of like the cultural part.
It is the Doge of Stowe. It's a mem.
Yeah,
It's right up there with Where's Sulu.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
it's developed its own kind of. Yeah.
it was a case of it's so bad it's good. You know,
It's not good necessarily, but because it's been around so very long, it's kind of, for me, it's kind of like losing Commander Box, man. I didn't want to lose Handsome Phaser Guy. I liked him.
Hey, kidding, I got his poster on my wall.
I know he came back. I was so happy. It made me joyous.
Yeah, I mean,
I miss Target.
So maybe there's a good way to, look at this is, I guess when do you not go back to remaster something? I would say when you're at risk of causing the George Lucas effect.
You know, I was just thinking about that, and I think there's a time limit you have to edit something again. Because, and I'm going to say this because Gene Roddenberry also was kind of guilty of this at times too. Every author, every single person who thinks they can go back and make it better does it at some point, and they want to do it.
Yeah,
because
it's almost a trap.
It is a trap, and it's one that's very easy to fall into. We're all guilty of it at least once in our life. Yeah. But the fact is, I think there has to be a time limit on it. You know, George Lucas. Okay, there were one or two things in the special editions I can live with because I get them. They do make it flow a little better, but most of them didn't go over well. Why? Because there was a sense of 25 years of nostalgia on top of that. You know, the same reason we're lamenting the loss of the Borg Third Dynasty here. We've become attached to it, as bad as it is. And we don't want to see that be changed, even if we know it's
for nostalgia's sake at this point.
Exactly. So my response is, you know, his first George Lucas's first Lucasing thing was adding Episode 4 onto the title, and that happened when it went to VHS release. Mm-hmm. You know, and that happened like a year or two after the movie had actually come out.
I think it was 2 or 2.5.
I was going to say it was about 3 years.
Yes, but nowadays that would be about a year or so in a modern day terms in comparison. Right. So that's kind of the idea, you know. Okay, when you've got the initial release and you got the hype, you know, okay, that's the period in which you can make some small adjustments. But once that period is done, cut it off. Cut it off. You're done. What it is what it is.
Mm. So something I've been kind of internally lamenting about the loss of some of these zones is that they're kind of stripping out the hard-to-find content. The parts of the game that reward the player for going off the beaten path. I've been getting...
Before the show, we were standing in one of those.
Yeah, I mean, before we were trying to do the show in one of the diplomacy missions. And I wouldn't be surprised if vast majority of the player base has no idea what the diplomacy missions are. But, I mean, if you get your diplomacy up and you talk to Sugihara, he will sometimes give you first contact missions to go to an exploration zone and negotiate first contact with a species.
And I have to say, I personally don't get why they even had to remove them. They could have just put them at the new cluster doors and just say, do first contact message for Delta Volantis.
I don't know, they might yet.
So I think they might still do that. They might see some wisdom in adding it back in. But I think you're right. I'm going to miss those first contact missions a lot. Not only because you had to go off the beaten path to find them, but because they rewarded a different sort of gameplay. Now, yes, all of them are very similar. They are Again, they're procedurally generated. This is the story of this race. You have to answer a few questions about them. You have to, but the missions reward you paying attention to the story that the alien tells you, so that you know the answers to the questions, because they're missions that have varying rewards too, which I think are nice. If you get everything perfect, you get X amount of diplomacy. I think it's 100. If you get
Now that was going to be my question, Hippie, if they change that, because realistically, that's possibly one of the reasons why it's out. But I'll let you finish first.
Okay, and I was going to say that you could get varying degrees. Like if you did everything right, you got 100. If you made one mistake, you might get 75 or something like that. And for me, I'm going to miss that, because that was it encouraged me to pay attention, and it was a different kind of gameplay, and I liked it.
But I mean, those are just one of the tip of the icebergs. I mean, we were talking about the Ferengi on Memory Alpha, and the Ferengi are an example of a side quest, and Star Trek has so few side quests that just going to a social zone, you happen to talk to the right person, and you get this oftentimes rather cute little engaging quest where you're trying to negotiate, I don't know, what is it, a coup between the two Ferengi, with one trying to weasel the other out.
Mm-hmm.
There's 3 variants on that too, and you get to do all 3 of them.
Yeah, and you get to, and then there's one. I mean, but there are other places like that, and it's stuff like that. That adds subtlety to the game, and I would say the big danger in just trying to hide away all of the old content is that you inadvertently kind of wipe away the subtlety, because you don't really have time to remake the subtle missions because they're almost never played. But
yeah, they're subtle.
Well, unfortunately, I think that a lot of it has to do with, I'll say, the legacy of it. All of these diplomacy missions that we're talking about reward a pittance of diplomacy XP, which was designed to work with the old diplomacy system, which
was like only 100.
Well, at one time, you only needed about, I think, 25,000 diplomacy points to be max level in diplomacy and have those benefits. This is all before the DOF system went in. They didn't change the reward system for any of these missions when they implemented the DOF system and changed Tier 4 to 100,000 experience. And they're only rewarding 10 or 100.
Yeah.
Here's my response to that, though, is that if you play all of these little diplomacy missions, you get to Tier 1 just from doing these little missions without ever once touching the DOF menu. And then you've unlocked the extra slightly more experienced DOF missions. So it was still helping people in a big way, even if it wasn't up to, okay, you're getting 1,000 diplomacy XP. It made that first level very easy, and it made it doable.
Couldn't do thing is, you couldn't do the first contact missions until you were up to 3rd. So yeah, the cast is very right. Like those missions that are throwing you 10 diplomacy XP and stuff, they are designed with the old numbers in mind.
So it's easy. And the response
I was going to say, now the easy thing to do would just be to up the XPs.
Exactly.
Yeah, up the reward.
Assuming that, now you just assume that somebody can change a number in a spreadsheet and it just magically happens, but I'm sure it's not that easy.
I'm certain it's not that easy. Especially in something that's procedurally generated. I think that may be part of the issue. When I rethink about it and when I talk about it, the fact that those missions are the first contact missions are generated by something that's incredibly like the Genesis.
Not quite, but pretty close. I'm sure they just did a few variations.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean,
the point still remains that we have stuff outside of the procedural generation that are being cut out as well with the memory alpha deletion.
Oh yeah, I know.
And like before everyone freaks out, we don't know. We know that we've kind of gotten it onto the attention of the devs, and we don't know yet what they'll finally decide to do with it.
Yeah,
so
it's what we definitely reiterated before is, the devs are letting us see this really early, which is cool because it means there's a lot of time for possibly more than what we consider normal changes to things. And as I've heard pointed out outside of us talking here on the show, there've already been some major changes to the crafting system and to what's happening based on community feedback. So because we have this so early, because they're willing to listen, get out there and talk about the things that are important to you so that they can listen. That's my best advice for people.
And let's be fair here. Back at the beginning of the year when D'Angelo took over, one of the things he mentioned is there were no real plans to update Gateway because it was barely used. Mm-hmm. Now we're talking about updating Gateway to have access to the DOF system and the crafting system.
Yeah.
These plans were already probably laid down at that time. So it's entirely possible that we're getting somewhat of a smokescreen and that there are plans. We don't know anything about Expansion 2 yet. For all we know, we could be getting Ferenginar in Expansion 2. We already technically have it in game thanks to the Undine stuff.
And actually, even as late as this latest P1 interview, Gecko has said that that's one of his. He would love to get the space in between filled as he...
Yeah.
And get like Ferenginar and like Trill and Beta Z and those.
Yeah.
So it's entirely possible we could see a Ferenginar map and they could be relocated to it. We don't know. This is our time to push for these sort of things.
Yeah.
Because
it's our time to say, like, we hope that the reason this is happening is because you're doing this other cool thing, and then they're going to be like, oh, we're not doing that other cool thing. Maybe we should consider that.
Yeah, I mean, plans are constantly changing. I mean, everyone likes to see everything that the devs ever say as set in stone, and it's very much not that. I mean, especially...
I saw a post on the forums today that was like addressing some postings that various devs have made and calling them promises. And I was like, and it's that sort of attitude is exactly why they stop talking about things that they would like to do and ideas that they would like to expand upon, is because people see things as promises, and there's never any promises from a dev in my book.
No, what they are is they're the devs' hopes of what they want to accomplish.
Yeah.
Devs have hopes?
No way.
Well, we already crushed their dreams. All they got left are hopes.
You know what I would love to see done with Memory Alpha? I would love to see it turned into a lore zone.
That's my you have my favorite idea for it.
I mean, can I tell you why I think that's... Can I just
turn it more into an asteroid base and just make it a research facility?
Well, I mean, Memory Alpha, it canonically was supposed to be the database storage for the Federation. It basically stored all accumulated knowledge.
Which, you know what they could do with that? Move that trivia lady from Starfleet Academy over there.
Yeah. And then make people go look up the Path to 2409 information, put it out around them, various consoles. You don't even have to redesign the thing. I mean, just hook it up to various consoles.
They could hook those consoles up as library access consoles, and Memory Alpha becomes a place that you can actually read the entirety of 2409 if you want to, so that the answers to those questions are actually in-game.
Yeah, I mean,
the only rain on the parade I have to throw is just that's making a player go to a single-purpose map for a single-purpose thing that doesn't necessarily have true gameplay things. Now, granted, what you could do is you could put a shuttle in Starfleet Academy that will shuttle you to Memory Alpha so that you can do it and jump back real quick.
That'd be cool.
Well, you know what? I just have to say this, and I've said this before. Why can't some of these bases be kind of small version of adventure zones? I've said this about DS9 before. Why can't we have little, like, every so often there'll be like, oh, there's a smuggler attack, or oh, you've got to go figure out someone's trying to hack into the database. Why can't there be like these little random things that just happen to pop up in these zones to give them a little bit more life?
Well, there used to be a fleet action there. There used to be a fleet action on DS9 where the Trueway invaded.
Yeah. I never got to see it, but I've heard all about it.
It was really hard, and you had to get a lot of people doing it at the same time.
Realistically, it's because they didn't start doing that kind of instant stuff till, well, Nimbus for sure. They put in the Nimbus 3 map.
New Romulus. And, New Romulus.
Yeah, New Romulus would have been before.
Which is why, we're saying, why not, they've talked about doing DS9 as a revamp in the future. There's no reason to not do Memory Alpha. The thing is, you could even throw in a diplomacy thing here. Like, once every couple of hours, an ambassador shows up and you have to talk with them and work something out. And then they just leave. That's minor stuff. And it gets people to want to go to these zones.
I would almost argue you don't have to get everyone to want to go to the zone. It's there to make something available, not necessarily be the hub or anything.
Right. I agree. You don't have to try to force people to a lore zone. Like the map is there. It might not be the greatest map in the universe, but I've realized while we're all talking what my biggest issue. Memory Alpha is a canon location, and normally I'm not a canon. Like everything has to be canon. I love that even though it's not the nicest map in the game, I can go to that location and visit it. I'm going to hate that location stops existing.
I mean, the same thing with sites like Andoria. I mean, Andoria was
useless.
Yeah, it's useless. It was supposed to be like a PvP zone, as far as I can tell. In fact, it talks about being able to do Ushan Tour tournaments. Mm-hmm. But obviously that never materialized. But I would still hate to lose it.
We can kind of keep going. Vulcan. You go to Vulcan once.
In the entire thing, I know.
Yeah. And it's got some of its own diplomacy missions.
And it's got a nice commodity broker. That's it.
Yeah, but those places exist because... Could you imagine playing a Star Trek game without having Vulcan in it? Or without having...
I did. It's called the Star Trek video game. It was released at the same time as Star Trek Into Darkness.
What movie are you talking about?
That one from the JJ
there was a movie, and then you just...
Yes, with the Gorn.
Oh, JJ. See, I don't know. There must be something.
It's a guy from Lost.
My mind. Oh, that dude. Yeah, he made some kind of space movie. I never paid attention to it. Anyway, yes. But I mean, could you imagine playing a Star Trek game without some of these locations? And that's why they're still there. So why does something like Memory Alpha? How do you envision a Star Trek game or a Star Trek universe that doesn't have Memory Alpha in it?
Here's, I guess, my question.
Boggles my mind.
And unfortunately, I don't have a PF Dennis handy to get my answer. In the original series, did we actually go to Memory Alpha?
Yes.
My memories of Memory Alpha come strictly from 2 novels that existed in the 80s.
Yes, it was shown in the TOS. In fact, that's where the image of the outside comes from, because that's what it looked like in TOS.
And in fact, I will get you an image for you, Castmodean.
Okay, I cannot remember off the top of my head, and I know it's been mentioned, but I did not know if we'd actually seen it.
What was it? Some kind of energy cloud attacked and killed everyone on Memory Alpha?
TOS plot number 4.
I honestly think that the exterior map, the system map, may be the thing that I'm going to miss the most.
Because, it looked like it did in TOS.
It looks perfect. It looks perfect. And they're just cutting it. It is an absolutely perfect representation of what I remembered from seeing on my television, and they're just getting rid of it. And that just hurts.
I'm making the internet go recursive. I'm going to Memory Alpha to look Memory Alpha up.
Yeah, I actually just posted a link in the chat.
Yeah, well,
Good.
I am noticing our time here.
Yeah.
We're heading up on the 2 hour mark here very soon. So, does anybody have any last things they'd like to talk about real quick before we start wrapping it up here?
Well,
Yes, I
here.
have. I have
Oh,
one. I
Okay.
have one. With the removal of the exploration missions, I would like to call upon the Foundry community to start making first contact missions and to replace those Explore Strange New World missions and make your own in the Foundry and when we get the doors for like Delta Volantis and so forth, put them in those clusters and let's get those clusters made as the Foundry author.
Yeah,
and
especially
that
if
was
those.
totally what I was about to say.
Okay.
This
Awesome.
this is our time now. We can take the lead on it and show that it can be done. It can be done cheaply. It can be done easily, and it doesn't have to be go here, click on these 5 things, go here, click on these 5 things, shoot this guy, done.
You know, if we're talking about ways in which the Foundry can be integrated into the rest of the game, I mean, what if any mission you could go up to a exploration door, and then just have a random Foundry mission come up that takes place in that zone.
We need to talk with Thomas the Cat about that to see if that can get put in the UI.
Yeah, it would require a bit of new tech, but it would be a way that the Foundry gets integrated into the game.
I'm actually gonna, after we get off here, I'm gonna actually go ask Taco if we can get that conference room map so we can make those first contact missions.
Yeah, he's going to tell you that maps take longer.
Yep, that's what he's going to say. Because they do. The maps take,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, Zero said maps take up to 4 hours.
Yeah, I know they take up to 4 hours. I'm just gonna put it out there and say, hey, we want to make up for this missing content.
But yeah, so with that, I think that's a really nice place to bring it to kind of some closure to a call for the Foundry community to replace some of these missions that we're going to be losing. Show us what you got, guys.
All right, I think we'll finish off with the contact info.
Yeah.
If you guys want to email us, you can email us at foundryroundtable@live.com. You can also contact us on Twitter at Foundry Roundtab. Drogan, when he's here, can be reached by Drogan1701. Hippiejohn is, of course, at Hippie_John. Markhawkman is at MAR Hawkman, and I can be reached at Greendragoon.
Do our guests have ways to reach them via Twitter?
Yep, I can be reached at SirBoulevard on Twitter. Just make sure to say something before you start following me, otherwise I'm going to think you're some sort of weird person.
Yeah, although be careful when talking to him because he might start talking back.
Right.
And usually the easiest way to get a hold of me is to talk at the Starbase UGC Twitter.
Awesome. Well, let's say goodnight, everybody.
All right, good
Good
night.
night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.